All right. Well, Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself as a start and tell the audience about your experience? Let's talk about Hudson and maybe how about something that you remember from your time in high school?
Well, a phone just rang, so I just didn't hear the last piece. But Jeffrey Fertinato Stein, 57 years old currently, and I grew up in Hudson, Ohio. Hudson High School, graduate of 1981. And I went through school in Hudson from the fourth grade through graduation. And when I moved into Hudson, there was like 2,400 people in town in the early 70s. So we lived on a grassy knoll on Boston Mills Road, right down the street from Lake Forest Country Club. So
what year was it that you moved to Hudson?
1971.
Okay, got it.
And we lived in Surrey Park Apartments on 91 while our house was being built, because my dad was a builder, a developer. So we bought the land, which was opposite of Lake Forest. We bought all of Pine Lake, and my dad subdivided all that. And of course, we took the crappier piece of property, not the lakeside. We took the Boston Mill side. So, but it was a really great town growing up, man. Open doors, lots of trees, not a lot of development. It was just a grassroots town with a peaceful existence.
And remind the listeners about your experience in high school with sports.
Well, I played all three sports that are important to me: track, wrestling, and football. We happened to have a really good team our senior year, but we lost every game our junior year. It was quite embarrassing, but we won the Suburban League Championship our senior year. But I was very athletic and hung around not with just the jocks, but the entire student body. But, you know, I can tell you, I went through a lot of trials and tribulations in sports, which people don't know. Back in the day, now they would go to jail for abuse, but I got beat up by the coaches. I could name them, but I won't because it's not important. But one of the coaches that I'm friends with still to this day is Coach Glavin, if you remember him.
Yep.
Coach Glavin cornered me in the locker room in one of the cubbies where the locker rooms were U-shaped into the hallway down the shower lane. But he cornered me in my sophomore year, and he said, because I didn't want to wrestle. I didn't want to play any sports. But he said, "You're going to wrestle for me." And I was like, "I'm not wrestling." And he said, "Well, you're not leaving this locker room until you do." And he and I got in a fist fight in the locker room where I dislocated his shoulder and actually almost had him bite his tongue off. He was just bleeding. And remember Ray Heiser, our athletic director? I ran into Heiser's office and Coach Glavin fell, called 911. I went back in there and I looked down at Coach, and he was laying on the bench, just bleeding and couldn't move his shoulder. And I said, "If I wrestle for you, can I wrestle you?" And he said, "Uh-huh." And every time I wrestled him in wrestling, I would dislocate his shoulder just as a reminder that you caused this. So, but sports was very memorable, and we had some really nice highs and lows, and I wish I could do it all over again.
You know, when you think about that type of abuse or the type of kind of aggressive nature, some people would probably be doing that to teach you a lesson, you know, thinking this is what, you know, these young kids need to learn. Whereas other people were just abusive, you know, they were just bad guys. And, you know, how would you describe what you experienced?
I think looking back, it was absolutely abuse, because it was just not that coach in that particular time. It was walking down the hallways and getting shouldered off my feet into the lockers from a football coach. It was verbally abusive. It was tough. I mean, it was tough to walk the halls,
Mm,
especially when that type of environment was around me. So I never told my mom until I was 30 of what happened.
mm,
And she was just like, why didn't you tell me? What are you going to do? Your kids just needs to get tough and he needs to play sports. And that would have been the environment. But if that would have gone now, if my kid came to me and told me, I mean,
mm.
it would have been a whole lawsuit and,
Yeah.
the school board would have been it. But it was an interesting existence, but one that I cherish. And, I remember fondly. I'm still very good friends with Coach Glavin and Coach Sogan and lots of the folks that made me who I am. And I'm glad I took the challenge.
Interesting. Well, my history at Hudson High ended at the senior year because I was in a drug rehab for the final year of 1982, 83. I graduated in 1983. So most people don't really recall me being around because I wasn't. But in my junior year and my sophomore year and high school year, I was just there was a song written about me,
Which
and it's
one?
called "Skinny Little Boy from Cleveland, Ohio, come to chase your women and drink your beer."
You
Alex
were
Bevan.
skinny. You were skinny, brother.
I was a very skinny kid, and I was just basically terrified. I walked those halls and I saw big guys like you and sports guys. And, I just thought, just keep my head down, stay away from all that. And so I didn't have that kind of physical, but emotionally, I was going through my own challenges, I think. And one of the, hardest things for me, of course, was drug addiction, which at that time seemed cool, seemed, fun, and getting high behind the school and going out and getting, smashed at, while you were on the football field, I was probably out in the audience, drinking it up somehow, some way. And, that really, luckily for me, our school, if you recall Christine Romano, if you recall Fred Ziegler, yep. And
Yep.
these people really helped me at a tough time and help my parents to get me into drug rehab. So that's the reason why for Hudson, I just wasn't around. I did homeschooling basically in the Solon schools at the drug rehab I was at for 7 months. So that's why I'm less, people just don't remember my senior year. Although I graduated from my treatment center, my drug treatment center called New Directions. I graduated there on the day that we had the graduation for 1983, class of 83. And then that night I went on the stage, and appeared in front of all my, friends. They were like, what the hell? And so that was my experience. But, I think, one thing I learned as I look back now, you just think about, for me, and this is my question to you is, what's one takeaway from what if we think about a high school kid going into high school now, what's one piece of advice that you would give? And I think for me, what I would say is don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. In other words, just because they're cool and just because they look like they're, there's tragedies going on in all of our lives. And I didn't see that when I was a young person. I thought because they looked good, they felt good. How about yourself? What would you say?
I think any kid going into school, middle school, where they start to develop, junior high, the senior into the high school, they've got to keep their voice. They've got to keep their voice and true to themselves. And the problem with our society is acceptance, right? You'd watch Kim Morris. You don't know Kim Morris, but Kim Morris used to walk the halls of Hudson High School in the Commons with hand-me-down sweaters, broken glasses. She was very indigent. Their family didn't have any money, and kids would throw pennies at her walking the hall across the Commons. Kids like David Rogers, who had mental challenges. Kids like Jimmy Piacoy, who were 4 years younger than us, where kids would wrap his lock up with tape so he'd be late for class, and when the bell rang, he would just go into convulsions. Kids are really cruel, and in order to save yourself, you have to have a voice and you have to be true to you. And you can't let people push you into doing things to hurt yourself. And one thing that I wish our society and the kids in Hudson, because there were a lot of mean kids in Hudson, Andrew, and I hope I was never mean to you, because I don't recall that at all. But I tried to challenge those kids, and I would stick up for those kids. And for the mean kids that are out there, I just want them to know that karma's a bitch. Their kids deserve better when they get older, and I hope you've taught them better than what you were as a human being. So I just kept my voice. I kept true to who I was. I didn't let anybody push me in that way. And I just embraced everybody. If you wanted to be gay or different or a nerd or, I mean, whatever. Listen, I was in the back of the school along with you. I mean, I might have been smoking cigarettes, but I got kicked off the track team for drinking. I had parties in my house in 8th grade with all kinds of substances that my mother called parents and say, we're having a potluck, but we're having beer. Do you mind bringing your kids? So look, I wasn't a good tushy. But at the end of the day, I just wish the kids have better experiences and don't move to substances to mask what they're feeling. Just be true and be vocal about who you are, and just stand tall, because you'll win you'll win. Believe me, you'll win.
You know, after I got sober, so I got sober in 1982, and I've been sober ever since, which is pretty amazing. But I remember I moved from Ohio and I moved to California. I went to school at Long Beach, and there was a lot of beautiful women there. And I would just, sit down next to some surfer girl, which, coming from Hudson, Ohio, you didn't see, that surfer girl type of, and I sat down and, I was really impressed by these women. And then one day, one of them said to me, cause, I lived a pretty simple life. I didn't drink, I didn't go out partying. I was really pretty serious about school. And she said to me one day, she said, you're a nice guy, but you're boring. And I said, and in my witty style, I said to her, someday, honey, you're going to want boring.
That's right.
So find your voice, be yourself, bring what you can to the people around you. I think your advice to find your voice and stay true to that. And don't let other people, push you into being something or doing something that's not true to your voice. If you, that's where we end up. If we end up with happiness in life, is that we discover that. So the sooner, if you can discover that in high school, then all the more.
Yeah, man. It gets worse. It gets worse with the groups. If you don't have your voice in jobs that you pigeonhole yourself because you don't have a voice to stand up, and you either stand up or stand aside. And I never wanted to stand aside. Yeah. You got to go through me if you got to get something. And luckily, I've had many good mentors. And that's the other thing missing. There aren't enough of those mentors that will take time with people that are not part of their family or their socioeconomical status. They're beneath them. And it's terrible. It's a sad. That's why we're doing a lot of our development in inner city landfills, where the eco-geo is just 80% of the AMI. These guys are living on $15,000 a year. They can't afford what they're affording. They're on vouchers. You see, they want to gentrify their neighborhoods with their families, but the money's pushing everybody out. Mm-hmm. Money's pushing them in areas that they don't really want to go, but they're forced to live in. And my partner and I have different thoughts about that. And, we give and we build, and we're trying to create jobs and teach people how to fish, not just cast a line.
All right. So let's wrap this up. And I got one last part of it. So let's just remind the audience where you are and where I am. I'm in beautiful Bangkok, Thailand, where I've lived for the last 29 years. And how about yourself?
I live in Pittsburgh, PA, and I've been here for the last 29 years.
And then I think our last parting words are going to be a little story. Maybe we can tell the audience of our connection before Hudson.
Well, unbeknownst to you, just a few moments ago, we knew each other back in the early 70s before we even moved to Hudson. And we lived exactly 0.8 miles, 0.8 miles, less than a mile from each other in Wilmington, Delaware, in a school system called Shipley. And your sister, Sharon, and I went to school there, and we had to cross. And I was, of course, a fat kid, so Sharon wouldn't have looked at me anyway. Your gorgeous sister back in the day, and she's still a beautiful lady. But you would have been what in 1970? You would have been what, 6 years old?
Yeah.
6 years old. So you were little Andrew.
Riding my
Sharon,
banana bike.
I had a Huffy banana bike too,
Yeah.
purple brother. That's it. That was the bike back then, all the way.
The Schwinn.
A Schwinn. That's it. Yeah, I had a Huffy. You had a Schwinn.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford the Schwinn. I had the Huffy.
So we connect all the way
way.
back to Wilmington, Delaware, and Shipley. You know, there's a guy that contacted me, I can't remember, I got to go back and look for it, who also went to Shipley. That I got to look for that. But yeah, that's an amazing connection.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Amazing.
it is. And we will ever be connected from HHS, my friend.
Amen. So I'm going to wrap this up now. And, but I just want to say that it's been great talking, and let's share this discussion with other friends from Hudson and friends from around the world. So
let's do it again soon. All the
Amen.
best to you, my friend. And I apologize humbly for being tardy for this call. And it was great to see you.
Yes.
Health and happiness for you, your mom, your family. Be safe and well, my friend.
Amen, brother.